So how much does it really cost to go racing? Well, a big shout out to Driver61 and Scott Mansell for helping me pull this video together. Scott makes some really good points about the cost of entry and the kind of things that you might want to consider when looking to start racing for the first time. It's a great video, and I think you'll really enjoy it. If you want more help and advice on setting up your race car, doing data analysis, simply learning how to drive faster, obviously be sure to visit us at yourdatadriven.com. So let's hear what Scott has to say.
Racing is extremely expensive. For example, an F2 budget is in the millions of euros, and GT budgets can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. But is it possible to get out on track for a reasonable amount of money? Well, that's what I'm going to look at in today's video, and the results might surprise you. If you're watching this channel, then you're already interested in motorsport and possibly already drive on track, or at the very least have thought about how you can get on circuit yourself. So today I'm going to explain how you can get on circuit for the least amount of money, and how much you spend on a car doesn't really correlate to how much fun you have on track. Hi, I'm Scott Mansell, pro driver and coach, and over the years I've tested and raced everything from Mazda MX-5s to Formula 1 cars, from Brands Hatch just doing a few laps, all the way to doing 24 hours of Spa. But with all my experience, I have to say the two things that stand out to me about motorsport, and the two things that I really love, is extracting the most speed from a race car, understanding how you get there, understanding how you push a car to its limits, and also the wheel-to-wheel racing with fellow competitors. Honestly, if you're pushing any car to its limit, to the edge of adhesion, it's so much fun. Add a race-long battle with a competitor to that, and you'll be having the time of your life. As it turns out, there are a whole host of racing series designed to cost the minimum amount for the maximum fun. So today I'm going to answer, what does it really cost to go racing? So what's the route into racing for someone who has never even turned a lap? Well, first of all, you're going to need a car. You're going to need something that you can drive on the circuit. And there are plenty of little sports cars out there on the market. Taking a quick look at Auto Trader or similar sites, there are lots of cars out there for £1,500 or less that would suit what we need to do. Thinking about the criteria for your track car, you should really think about light cars only. This means that the cars are actually better through the corners, they handle more like a racing car, but also very importantly, it won't chew through tyres and brakes. Common favourites such as MX-5s and MR2s are a good place to start. They're light and cheap and lots of fun to drive on track. Once you've bought your car, just check the oil, check the brakes and so on before you do go out on track, but then take your car to a local track day and explore what it's like on circuit. Of course, if you don't feel comfortable to go out there alone, they usually have coaches who will sit by you for the first couple of sessions. Then you can begin to work on your racing line, your trail braking and all the technique you need to be fast on the circuit. In terms of making changes to the car, I wouldn't recommend going crazy. In fact, I would only really consider changing the brake pads, especially if you're using something like an MX-5. I think the key here is to get out on circuit as cheaply as possible to understand whether you actually enjoy the track day experience. And the reason for changing the brake pads is that typical road brake pads just simply won't last with the extra braking forces on the circuit, so you'll want to upgrade these. However, a performance set for something like a Mazda MX-5 will only cost you around £90. A typical thing that I see when drivers get out on track is that they just want to spend lots of money on their car and not actually work on their own technique. My advice here is actually only spend the minimum amount on your car and really work on your technique while you're in a slower car. When you're in a slower car, that means you have more capacity to really think about your driving and extracting the most speed from that car. If you then do want to go into something faster, you'll have all of the fundamental technique absolutely perfected before you can then work on the extra power or the extra grip that the new car may have. So you've done a number of track days, but you want something more. Well, when it comes to this, it's time to go competitive racing. We have hundreds of different championships in the UK, and some of them can be very expensive. However, there are some that are specifically designed to reduce as much cost as possible. These championships are absolutely brilliant, and because of their lower price point, they tend to have really full grids, with some championships having over 50 cars per race. For example, the 750 Motor Club in the UK have an MR2 championship in which there are 3 different models and they race at some of the best circuits around England. The cars can be bought fairly cheaply second hand and can be modified using a kit. However, if you're not keen on getting your hands dirty, race ready cars are available for about £4,000. Now, I know this isn't particularly cheap for what is essentially a hobby, but in terms of motorsport, this is quite a good deal. Another great example is the Clio 182 Championship. Now, these little cars are absolutely fantastic fun to drive on the circuit, and this series in particular only allows stock cars. The cars, of course, will have to be upgraded for the safety standards, including a roll cage and fire extinguisher, but this can all be bought directly from the championship. Again, if you don't want to do the work yourself, you can buy race ready cars for around £5,000. Clios and MR2s might not be what you had in mind when you dreamed of racing a Ferrari, but I do have to say the racing in these small cars is absolutely brilliant, with the grids often only being split by a couple of seconds, which makes for some fantastic racing. The other thing about club level motorsport is that they go to some truly fantastic circuits. Too often we're used to seeing the Formula 1 circuits with acres and acres of runoff, but race in one of these club championships and you'll be racing at circuits such as Alton Park and Cadwell Park, which is nicknamed the mini Nürburgring. The corners are fast, the track is narrow, and there isn't any runoff to speak about. These circuits are a real thrill to drive around. Earlier in the year, I was invited to have my own club racing experience, racing in the Mazda 7 Championship at Snetterton. This is a really interesting series, and the cars are actually based on a book called Build a Race Car for £250. And while that number may be pushing the limits of what's possible, this championship is excellent value for money. These low-cost cars, and that's actually what they're called, are kept very simple in order to keep the cost down and use a lot of standardized parts from road cars, again, to try and keep the costs down. These are kit cars and relatively simple, so actually quite a lot of the drivers build the cars themselves and run them during the race weekends. Not only is this a lot of fun, but it really helps you understand the mechanics of the car you're driving, and it also helps your own driving on track. The low-cost cars in this series all have 1.8 Mazda engines, meaning they're very durable and the racing is close. This championship runs on standard road tyres, as specialist racing slicks can be very, very expensive. For example, I raced in a championship called the Radical Series a few years ago, where a set of 4 slick tyres cost over £1,000, not to mention only lasting a race weekend, whereas the low-cost tyres cost about £270 a set and could potentially last you for the whole season. While these tyres may not give you the absolute best grip, if everyone's on the same rubber, it's all fair. The advantage of road tyres, of course, is their cost, but with the safety required and the extra depth needed for wet conditions on the road, they can sometimes feel a little bit wallowy under the driver. This is because the deep tread blocks actually move and deflect when the cars underload in the corner. The solution to this is to have the tyres buffed, which is where the excess rubber is actually shaved from the tyre, reducing the depth of the tread, allowing the tyre to perform better and not overheat because the tread isn't moving around quite as much. If you run the car yourself and keep a close eye on the costs involved, you could have a season's budget of just over £3,500, and that's for 7 rounds and 14 races. That's by no means cheap, but it is a reasonable cost for motorsport. So what are these cars like to drive and how much fun are they on track? Well, this car is based on the Caterham 7. It's a light car with a reasonable amount of power and not too much grip, so it's fantastic fun in the bends. The racing was close but respectful. Now, the good thing about these cars, as well as the Caterham 7s, is that they are very unaerodynamic, meaning that when you're in a straight, accelerating down the straight, you're actually getting a huge tow from the car in front of you. And what this actually means is that you get clusters of cars racing because it is very difficult to break that slipstream. This, of course, leads to very close racing and exciting overtakes. The Mazda 7 Championship is a really good place to learn the skills of racing. The cars have a big window of limit, meaning that you can really feel how the car is reacting underneath you and really hone your skills on the racetrack. I actually jumped into this car without any kind of testing and really needed to find the limit as quickly as I could. During qualifying, the track was damp, which is the most difficult conditions to try and find the limit of a car in. However, because these cars are pretty friendly to drive, it was quite easy to find the limit of the car within a couple of laps and then work on refining my own technique to extract the most speed from the car. So in the end, I qualified third, which I thought was pretty good for the first time that I'd been in the car. And then during the race, I actually got a good start and settled in third position. I then sat in third position for a few laps, just trying to understand the other drivers a little bit better. Typically, when you're following in traffic like this, you'll be quicker in one area of the circuit than the other driver and vice versa. So I sat there and tried to understand this with the cars around me. Luckily, I was quicker coming out of the slowest corner that's onto the longest straight at Snetterton, meaning I was able to slingshot the car in front of me, getting a better exit and getting that tow from behind them, meaning the overtakes weren't particularly difficult. And so I managed to move forward a couple of positions and ended up winning this race. But more to the point, I had an absolutely brilliant weekend mixing with everyone in the paddock and driving what are cheap but really fun racing cars. So thank you to everyone at 750 Motor Club, Your Data Driven and the Mazda 7 Championship. I really enjoyed the weekend with you guys. If you enjoyed this video, check out these other videos which we think you'll love, and don't forget to subscribe to the Driver 61 channel for more really interesting motorsport. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.